Oh, Theo and Gopika and Marilia, it's just so wonderful to have an opportunity to talk to you after your presentations. Thanks very much for being part of this conference. And it's always wonderful to have time to take a bit of a deeper dive in some of the questions that may have come up for the audience as well. And one of the things that people are always interested in is understanding how you ended up where you are. And this panel is very interesting because we have Kopika, who came from India and is now in Germany. And we have Fio, who was born in Italy and she's now in California. And we have Marilia, who was born in Brazil, then went to Europe and is now back or also here in California. So how did that happen, Marilia? Just starting with you.
I did my whole training in Brazil, my undergrad, my master's, and my PhD. During my PhD, I started traveling. In Brazil, we have this wonderful exchange program from the State Foundation of São Paulo, FAPESP. And I spent a year abroad in New Zealand. Then I came back and did my postdoc at UC Riverside, started working with insects. Then I got a Marie Curie fellowship to work in Switzerland. And that's when I got my job here at UC Merced. So that's when I came back. So it's been wonderful. I've been in touch with lots of different cultures, and I think that's really, really great you learn a lot just by, interacting with different cultures from different parts of the world. So very lucky.
What about you, Theo? How did you end up where you are?
Yeah, I was struck as a very similar path as Maria was describing, including the fact that I wanted to go to vet school, but then for the same reason that you described, I decided to go into ecology. And I grew up in Italy, and I've always loved nature. I've always spent a lot of time on the coast and at sea. And so I went into natural sciences and did my undergraduate in Florence. And then when I finished, I was a little stuck because at the time in Italy, it was really difficult to get positions and support and fellowships. So I ended up working for free at the university and supporting myself doing odd jobs. I work at the horse racetrack, and unrelated. And then one of the jobs that I got was with the nature documentary company, the television company, and I ended up working for a nature documentary in East Africa. And that opened up lots of opportunities. I then did research there in Kenya on mangrove forest ecosystems. And then at the time I had applied for fellowship, so I went to Australia for a year. I came to the US on a Fulbright and started my PhD, and then I ended up continuing on that path, and in marine science and a postdoc, etc. And I ended up at Stanford. So a very circuitous path and lots of turns and changes, but this is where I ended up.
And Gopika, you came from India, you ended up working in Germany. How did you end up in Germany?
So I always wanted to do something with science and with space. So I was watching a lot of Star Trek as a child, and I wanted to be like Spock in Data right from the beginning. And in India, if you're good at science and mathematics, you either become an engineer or a doctor. It's very clear. So I didn't like biology as a child. And so I thought, okay, I'll choose physics, chemistry, maths, and then I'll go on and become an engineer. And at that point, there was no field of space or remote sensing in India. And then in 2003, there was the Columbia disaster where the space shuttle Columbia exploded. And there was Kalpana Chawla, an Indian astronaut, a NASA astronaut, but still of Indian origin. She was on board. And I remember as a child, that was monumental for me because there was a person who looked like me and doing something that I wanted to do. So I knew that, okay, I wanted to always do something with space, but then here in India, there was nothing with space. So I said, I'll go and do a bachelor's in electronics and communication because that would open a few avenues. And then in my sixth semester, I had a subject on satellite navigation and satellite communication. And I knew that was it. Satellites were my path to space. And back then, there was nothing in India. We're talking about 2005. So I knew German because my dad, he was in the Navy and posted in Germany. So I knew a little bit of German. So I thought, okay, might as well look into master degrees in Germany. But I'm an engineer. I then went on to do satellite engineering to build satellites and put them in space. And then there I thought, okay, we have a lot of people launching satellites, but we need people working with the data and communicating results to the people that actually use the data. So then I got into remote sensing, did a PhD, stayed in academia for a long time, wanted to do the whole, postdoc, PI, professor thing, didn't work out because of COVID, baby, everything else. And I never thought I would launch my own big data satellite company, but that also recently happened. So it's all falling, the universe has a way of just falling into, a certain pattern that gives you success at the end and you make the best of it. So yeah, that's my story.
Now at this, for some of you, at the intersection of a domain like oceanography, ocean sciences and data, and for Gopika as a data generator and observer, what has been for you the most surprising and most exciting development in data science that has helped you or your colleagues in the field?
Yes, maybe my experience is a little different, but for me, kind of the revolution happened many years ago, over 20 years, when as a field ecologist, someone who spends their time in the field, rubber boots, wetsuits, doing experiments, I came in contact with a new center that the National Science Foundation had funded in Santa Barbara, the National Center for Ecological Analysis and Synthesis. And that was a revolution in ecology, I think, that happened. There's many others, but basically that center brought together ecologists with data scientists. And the research that I ended up doing there as a postdoc and as part of working groups leveraged the many disparate studies that are done in ecology to bring them together and create general insights through meta-analysis and other techniques that came from the social and medical sciences. So that, as well as development in metadata standards and data sharing and time series analysis, really kind of unleash the potential that ecology can have to generate patterns and insights that are broadly significant. So that, to me, was the revolution. Recently, the development, Gopika in satellite, remote sensing combined with machine learning, artificial intelligence, I think is the new revolution that is happening in my field in ecology and conservation, sustainability, and for oceans.
The NCS in Santa Barbara was a huge game changer. And more recently, I would totally agree. It's the AI and the different applications, even for basic science, trying to identify species. AI has been people are really trying to use AI you can take a photo I work with bees of a bee and it tells you exactly which species it is. There's iNaturalist as well, which is really cool for that, helping you identify and bring more data into distributions and species abundances and things like that. And yeah, I think AI and just the expansion of computer power as well. So you can just model more and more and try to gather more data. I think with now technology is becoming cheaper and cheaper to build things like sensors and cameras and all that's gonna really, I think the next revolution we're living through the next revolution in terms of how much data we're going to be able to gather from nature. And I think it's going to be hard to figure out when is enough now, because there is a point when you have to stop gathering the data and really sit down and analyze it.
No, I wanted to on a point that Marilia made about the importance of citizen science. iNaturalist, eOcean, Sharp Pulse, all of these platforms that really draw on. It's to the earlier point. There's all of this distributed knowledge and resources, and data science advances are really allowing us to leverage them better, bring them together. Still many gaps, especially in ocean systems, I would say. There's a lot of gaps in knowledge, but I think citizen science combined with AI is one of these incredibly exciting developments that we can leverage more.
I wanted to touch on what you said, Marilia, about when do you know you have enough data? Because I think in the field of remote sensing, ever since Copernicus launched all of its free data, and ever since Landsat got free data, we've had an immense amount of big data. We've reached a point where we have so much of data around the world that even computing power is not enough right now. So we're dealing really with, we have too much data, but what does it say, like you say? And that's the biggest trend that I see happening. More and more companies, more and more universities are changing their strategy to, just initially back then, remote sensing used to be land cover analysis with using one image. Now it's land cover analysis over the last 50 years using 50 years data where they use 5,000 images or more. And universities are slowly changing their strategy from just results to what do we see in the results and how can you combine this with the different fields. And I think one trend is this transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary thing. It's very fluid right now. Where does ecology end and where does remote sensing start?
Where are you all hoping that your particular domain will be in 10 years from now? You're all mentioning that you're excited. You think there is maybe another revolution happening. Where do you think, where are your hopes going?
I mean, for
Theo.
me,
Yeah.
the vision, sorry, I was sorry, but for me, the vision is really one of scaling and putting data science and its capacity, the insights in the hands of everyone. I think that oceans are big, huge, lots of coastlines, lots of communities that are deeply dependent on oceans, profoundly affected by its changes, and empowering those communities to track change, to make decisions that are informed by data, to have access to data or information, lots of different forms. It's really the exciting revolution that is happening through frugal science and a democratization of science and access to technology and to the advances in data science that are making analytical capabilities, visualization more accessible. That is what I hope.
For me,
An ocean for all through data science.
A great
for me, I
slogan.
think
One
sorry.
can dream.
For me, I think it's really communication. So that also is what you said, Theo, that at the end of it, the results, the needs of everybody needs to be communicated. The results of what science is today doing needs to be communicated in a way that the people can really use the information to make quick decisions, to make important policy changes, to really preserve our planet. So it's really like we are on one planet and everybody is affected. And we also need a lot of diversity in this because, we need the voices of everybody represented to solve this global problem. So we have big data, we have the computing power, what we need diverse voices to tell us what's happening around the world. And then we need to communicate it to everybody around so that people are not lost when they need to make really quick decisions about wildfires, about sea level changes, about tsunamis coming, about, everything that's happening around the world that is causing pain. So, and also happiness. I mean, there is everything, both, but we need to communicate this in a proper way.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been noticing a big change, I think, in also even for grants, for funding agencies, now it's all required to have outreach, to involve the local communities, to involve traditional knowledges. And I think that's a really important change that happened. And I hope that in 10 years from now, that means that all the science we're producing are actually being applied and being useful for society. Not that all science, science is always useful, but in a sense that, for example, you can produce food because we know exactly, thinking about my work, we know exactly what plants attract more pollinators, and that in turn is going to improve your crop yield in your little farm in the back of your house, and not only for agricultural familiar agriculture, but also for larger landscapes as well.
Oh, you have all touched on climate change. It's one of the areas that a lot of us, of course, are very concerned about. We've just had a summer here in the Northern Hemisphere with quite a lot of extreme weather events. Um, but I wanted to ask you not what concerns you about this, but I wanted to end this panel by asking what gives you hope from your own field around climate change. To end this on a positive note, really curious to hear.
If I may start, I think on a positive note, what's happening is that people are really proactively working together to solve this global problem. Solutions are being made that can be developed rapidly based on scientific facts and not just long-term plans that would take a long time. So today we need rapid actions, we need informed decisions, and I think that can only be made because of people coming together.
You
Yeah,
have the last word, Marilia.
oh no, that's too much pressure. I was gonna say, I think also I totally agree with Gopika and Fio, and I would also add, I think this new generation is also more aware than, for example, my generation is or was, I don't know, about climate change. And I think we're still making slow progress, but we are making progress. And I think if you think about 10 years ago, there was even slower progress. So I think we're making faster progress, even though I do think it's still very slow, but I think it's changing. And because it's so dramatic right now, right? You can really see. I mean, we had a tropical storm in California for the first time ever. We have, I was just reading that the emperor penguins had a terrible breeding year because of the ice. There was not enough ice for them to breed. So we're seeing like terrible things happen right now. So I think this urgency is bringing fast changes. And I'm optimistic. We'll see. Maybe we should redo this panel in 5 years and see whether we're still optimistic.
You're on. Let's do that. And thank you so much, all of you, again, for being part of WITS in this September on this September 14th. Your talks wonderful, lots of fantastic insights, and really nice to chat a little bit longer and get some deeper insights. And everyone, thanks for joining us.